love. I really do enjoy it. Okay, recording started. Continue. Yeah, so I'm going to be chatting to you about South Africa and birding in South Africa. And I've entitled the talk Birding the Rainbow Nation. So this was a term which was coined after we had our first democratic elections in 1994 after the fall of apartheid. And it just, incorporates all the different cultures of South Africa, and basically just how things have just improved dramatically since the end of apartheid. And I'm going to tell you more about South Africa. So this is just a shot of the Drakensberg Mountains as my title slide here. So South Africa, so we are right on the southern tip of Africa. It's to get across from America, where I think most of you are this evening, there are direct flights now, I think perhaps from Miami across to Johannesburg. A lot of people go via Europe to get to South Africa, but it can take quite a long time, but there are direct flights nowadays. And then just a little bit about birds and birding in South Africa. So we have a bird list of about, I think it's about 850 species, including all the vagrants and migrants. We have 69 endemics and near endemics. And when I use the term near endemics, which I probably will use a bit throughout the talk, that's referring to birds which occur in South Africa and then into neighboring countries. I think it's when 70% of the species range occurs in one country, with the remaining 30 or less occurring in a neighboring country. So that's what the term near endemic means. And endemic, of course, refers to a species which has its entire range within one country. So apart from the birds, the other great thing about a wildlife trip to South Africa is that we have the megafauna. So the big five, so that's being your lion, your leopard, buffalo, elephant, and rhino. So you don't only have to focus on the birds, you can also focus on or enjoy the big hairies, and that in places such as Kruger National Park. So it's a massive park. It stretches north to south over 500 kilometers, which is bigger than a lot of medium-sized countries, and just has as I was about to talk about now, so like amazing value for money within the country. Accommodation and food is relatively cheap, especially if you're coming over with dollars or with euros or pounds. I know, for example, eating out in the evenings is so much cheaper compared to enjoying a meal and a glass of wine back home. I've had friends who've come over and I just cannot believe how cheap things are, especially for things like eating out and for accommodation. It really is incredible value for money. So infrastructure in South Africa is really good. So it's the best in Africa. It's on par with a lot of European nations in terms of our roads. And also birding infrastructure. We have a lot of lodges and game reserves set up to accommodate birders and to accommodate nature tourism, which we obviously use on our tours. And so just to briefly, this talk will start in the south of the country in Cape Town, where I am now. This photo is taken in Betty's Bay looking for rock jumpers. That's about an hour away from me. And basically I'll head up the East Coast and then up to the northeast of South Africa, to the Kruger National Park, and finish in Johannesburg. And this talk is based on 2 tours that we do, which we run through Birding Ecotours, or as Birding Ecotours. So that's an 8-day, we call it the best of Cape Town and beyond. So it's an 8-day tour. And this is the map here. And then the other tour, which I will talk about later on in the presentation, is our 18-day subtropical South Africa tour. So that's based, we start in Durban and we ultimately finish in Johannesburg. So starting on the East Coast, head to Kruger National Park, and then finish up inland in Johannesburg. So this is the, I'll just talk you through the 8-day tour that we do first off. And this is down the Cape. So we started from Cape Town. So, very easy city to reach. It's an international airport. And then we start off birding just around places like Kirstenbosch Botanical Gardens, which is right on the edge of the city. And that's where we find iconic species such as this Cape sugarbird. So this is a endemic family. There's only, near endemic family, I should say. There's only 2 species within this family. That's the Cape sugarbird and the Gurney sugarbird. So Gurney sugarbird occurs in South Africa and then just across into Zimbabwe. We also then, of course, head down to Boulders Beach in Simonstown, which is on the coast, where we get these African penguins. I was actually there on Monday. We had a public holiday here on Monday. So I went down to Boulders Beach and spent some time with the penguins. And they really are so much fun. They've got a crazy, they used to be called jackass penguins, but they've been called African penguins now, which is maybe a little more PC term. But they do sound like a donkey, which is where the jackass came from. They've got this braying noise or braying call. And they're the same genus, I think, as Magellanic penguins, which also have a similar call, which some of you might have seen on South American channels. We do some birding down in Simonstown. We also bird. So when we're in places like Kirstenbosch Botanical Gardens and basically anywhere in the fynbos. So fynbos is a unique vegetation type found down in South Africa. It's incredibly biodiverse in terms of the plants. It's actually a floral kingdom of its own, one of the 6 floral kingdoms in the world. And it's actually very similar to the chaparral vegetation, which you would find in California. It's more of a succulent type vegetation with very small leaves. So fynbos means small. It refers to the small leaves, as you can see on this photograph. So this is an orange-breasted sunbird, and it's an endemic to South Africa, and it's only found in the southwestern Cape. And I think, in my opinion, it's the most beautiful of our sunbirds. So we don't have sunbirds we don't have hummingbirds in South Africa, but we do, or in Africa at all. But we have our equivalent nectivore is of the sunbirds, and they really are spectacular. They have these iridescent plumage, and this is actually quite a smallish bird, quite a long tail, but very common in the fynbos. So pretty much a guaranteed bird you would see on a Cape birding trip. Another really cute little bird. This is a bird you'll see quite easily in Kirstenbosch Botanical Gardens. This is a male Swee waxbill. We've got a little high-pitched call, which, unless you're aware of, it's quite easy to overlook. They're tiny little birds, just a few centimeters tall, but quite common in the Kirstenbosch Botanical Gardens and on forest edges. So the next area I'm going to chat to you about on our 8-day Cape tour is Betty's Bay. So that's just east. You can see the arrow there, just east of Cape Town. That distance is probably about 60 kilometers. So just about an hour from Cape Town. And the star bird here is Cape Rock Jumper. Quite similar to, I guess, similar in stature and in size to one of your mockingbirds. Excuse me. And this is an endemic family to South Africa. Will actually occur in Lesotho, which is a country surrounded by the Kingdom of Lesotho, which is surrounded by South Africa. So in theory, they do occur within South Africa. And we have this Cape Rock Jumper, which we generally have very good success at Betty's Bay area in the Cape Fold Mountains. They move around little family groups. They are cooperative breeders. So they have the previous year's clutch or offspring will help raise the next year's or the current year's chicks. So they'll help provision chicks. So they move around these little family groups and they or they do as their name suggests. They jump and hop along the rocks, and they've got this very high-pitched, excitable call, which if you are aware of, it's actually quite easy to hear. And then it does take a little bit of work to actually pick out, believe it or not, on these rocks. But that's the real big special we look for on our second day normally of our tour. So that's a fame-boss endemic. This is another fame-boss endemic. This is a little warbler. This is actually probably one of our brighter looking warblers, believe it or not, although it's a fairly dull orange look to it. This is these are mostly my colleague Dylan Vaspoli's photographs, which I'm using, and this is really a really impressive photograph. So they are really skulking birds. It's not very often that you actually see them sat out like this. So this is a Victorins warbler, which we look for in the Betty's Bay area. Yet another fame-boss endemic. This is Cape Siskin. It's a little canary. This is a male bird, which is shows that nice yellow on the underparts where the females are a bit duller. And these birds, they are found in the Cape Fold Mountains, so we often see them while out looking for Cape rock jumpers. We also get ground woodpeckers down there, which is a very similar woodpecker to your flickers, mostly a terrestrial bird, sat out on rocks. And then, so while we're down in Betty's Bay, we often visit Africa's second or one of two mainland African penguin colonies, where we get things like African oyster catcher. We clean up on all our cormorants while we're down there. We get Cape cormorants, bank cormorants, crown cormorants, and white-breasted cormorants. Those are all the coastal cormorants. And then now getting back to the route again, we also include a pelagic trip, which is a really special day out. It rivals New Zealand pelagics in terms of both the diversity that we see on the day out and also the numbers. So we do our trips in October generally, this 8-day tour, but of course we can do them at any time of the year. And that's when there are still a few winter birds around. It's actually a very interesting time of year. So most of our actually summer breeding birds, most of them, the pelagic species, such as your albatrosses, your petrels. But in winter, when it's colder, they actually move up further north from the subantarctic and from the Antarctic, the Southern Ocean, and they come feed off the Gullis Bank or South Africa. So in October, it's still cold enough that there's still a few birds around. Well, I say a few thousand birds around, which have wintered here before they head back south to breed in the austral summer. So I'll show you a few photographs from our Cape pelagic trips. So the name of the game for these pelagic trips is we head out in a smallish boat, taking about eight clients, and then normally the guide and a couple of crew. So quite a small boat, but it's quite nice that we can just basically shoot out as quick as possible. And we look for trawlers. So big, so they're mostly going for hake and deep sea hake. So they have those huge nets, which they trawl along the bottom of the ocean and then scoop up the huge numbers of hake and other bits and pieces. And that's when, if we get there late morning, which we do, that's when they bring up their nets, and it's just chaos. There's gannets diving all over the place. We normally get 4 species of albatross on a normal day, and you can get 6 or 7 albatross species days when you get things like southern royal albatross, northern royal albatross, wandering albatross. So those great albatrosses are the birds we're really looking for, in amongst the thousands of Indian yellow-nosed albatrosses and black-barred albatrosses. We also look out for these giant petrels. We get both species. We get northern and southern giant petrel. This is a northern because it's got a reddish tip to the bill there, where southerns have a greenish tip. But they are really impressive birds, especially when they're about the size of an albatross. They're really big and bulky, got that huge bill, and you can see quite nicely the tube nose here, which is how albatrosses and petrels and procellariforms get their name. They've got these highly developed olfactory cells for smelling, and they basically are scavengers of the sea. They smell out rotting fish or any other, crustaceans which might be around, or whales. Actually go for, you find big groups of these at whale carcasses, sorry, where you'll find 20 fetid just ripping into a whale. I've never actually seen that, but seen photographs of it. We also get things a little bit early in the season. In July, August, September, we get prions, such as Antarctic prions, called whale birds. They're often associated with cetaceans, and follow them around. And they pick off little bits of food off the surface, and they actually filter feed. And then, of course, so albatrosses. So this is probably the most common albatross on the day. This is shy albatross. These birds come from New Zealand. We get large numbers of juvenile birds. They come spend their first 3 or 4 years off Cape Town, the really reproductive waters, off their Benguela current and their Gullis current. And we get these cold water upwellings, which are really productive waters. And we get lots and lots of albatrosses. So you can, on a really good day, you literally get thousands of these birds behind the trawlers. You can see 4,000 albatrosses, maybe not all at once, but 1,000 here, 1,000 there. It really is quite a spectacle to enjoy. And I'd suggest it for any seabirders. You do need to experience a Cape Town pelagic at some point. Next on our itinerary, after we finish our time around Cape Town and the Cape Peninsula, we head up the west coast to Langebaan and to the West Coast National Park. We bird some of the agricultural fields, such as the wheat fields, en route for our national bird. This is South Africa's national bird, the blue crane. Quite majestic looking birds, and that's actually, this might look like it's got a long tail, but those are actually its tertial feathers. So it's wing feathers, which are the feathers closest to its body. It's actually got a very short tail. You can probably just see the tail ending there. Sorry, I'll go back again. You can see the tail ending there. So it's quite weird when you see them in flight. You expect them to have a long tail, but they don't. But yeah, we normally always get these on our tours around Cape Town. They're actually quite common in certain areas. This is another endemic. This is Cape Clapperlark. There's actually 2 subspecies, which used to be different species, but now have been lumped into one, Cape Clapperlark, and not a difficult bird to see. They're called clapperlarks because they have an aerial display where they fly up and they actually clap their wings together. And it's quite interesting to listen to. And then they do a high-pitched descending whistle as they come down, ascending whistle. And quite an easy bird to find out in the Strandveld up the west coast. So while birding the West Coast National Park, it's probably one of the best wader watching or shorebird watching spots in South Africa. We get large numbers of Palearctic migrants, so birds from the Western Palearctic mostly, such as curlew sandpipers and red knots and bar-tailed godwits and Eurasian whimbrels, Eurasian curlews. We get them in their thousands, and we normally try to time our trip to one of the hides on the edge of the lagoon, where we can enjoy all the shorebirds as they come in to feed. And one of the probably standout species on the day is chestnut-banded plover. It's basically a southern African endemic. I think it just creeps into Angola, but it really is a beautiful looking bird. And we visit some of the salt works up in the area where we almost guaranteed, and I've never missed them on a trip to the salt works there. And perhaps I would say one of our best looking raptors, possibly one of the world's best looking raptors, but I'm biased. This is black harrier. Perhaps not the greatest shot. I think this is my shot actually. But they occur, they're a South African near endemic. They occur into Namibia also. They got this jet black plumage with these pale underwings and a very striking pale yellow eye. And you see them quartering over the Strandveld and over the fields. You're mostly targeting, I guess, mostly rats and other small mammals. So we keep a lookout for them on our day up the West Coast, and we normally do get them. They take a bit of work, but we generally always find them. And then carrying on with our itinerary here, we go from the West Coast over here, and we head inland through the mountains here and up into the Tankwa Karoo, where we stay at a little lodge called Hartnexkloof. And we spend 2 nights here, basically birding the Tankwa Karoo and the plains. And here we have a high number of endemic species, so South African endemics and near endemics. It has these so vast, they look like desolate or seemingly desolate plains. There's actually a lot of life and a lot of birds in them. So, and I'll tell you about some of these birds now. So this is Karoo erymomola. It's a little warbler, probably again one of our brighter looking warblers. They're mostly greys and browns, our warblers. And yeah, this is a South African near endemic. It creeps into Namibia, following the Karoo vegetation. And yeah, again, it's not a bird we normally miss, very rarely miss. I don't know if I have missed them on birding trips up there before. They occur in these little family groups. And you, again, it's another one, you really got to know the call. Quite a distinctive call, but quite a quiet call. And you can normally track them down like that. This is a cinnamon-breasted warbler, but it's not an easy bird to find. They occur on these little koppies, which are basically big boulder-strewn slopes, or sort of triangular-shaped little mountains, I guess you could call them, little hills. And this is where these warblers occur. And they can be incredibly skulking and difficult to see. And you often hear them calling from within big canyons and dry riverbeds. And it can be very tricky to actually pick out where they're calling from because there's so much echo going on. So these normally take a bit of work, but it's generally not a bird we miss. Out on the plains, so this is actually it's a type of bustard, but we call a lot of our local bustards korhaans, which is an Afrikaans word. Yeah, quite a beautiful looking bird actually. If you really have a look at the patterning on their back there, they've got these quite weird frog-like caws, which you often hear in the morning, and then often take a bit of work to actually scan the big open plains where they occur. Another little warbler, rufous-eared warbler. Maybe I've been rude to our warblers. They actually are good-looking birds. Perhaps not in the same category as your wood warblers, but they are subtly beautiful. Nice, these nice chestnut or rufous ear coverts and little dark breastband. Quite a common bird throughout the Karoo. This is a rufous-eared warbler. And then I'm going to chat to you now about our Eastern South Africa tour, heading up into the northeast of South Africa. So this is our subtropical South Africa tour. This is a shot out over, I believe, the Blyde River Canyon, which we drive through towards the end of the tour. And this is the itinerary which we follow. So we start down, this is a 18-day tour. We start down in Durban. This tour links up nicely with our previous 8-day Cape tour. So we fly straight from Cape Town up to Durban. So we land in Durban, and then we head straight off to Heimdal. This is in the Drakensberg area, where we bird the Drakensberg Mountains, which are just really beautiful mountains. A few endemic birds around there too. We then head up basically into Zululand, into KwaZulu-Natal. We bird the Fawnveld and the Sandveld around here, heading through into the Highveld of Bakkerstroom, which is full of endemics such as larks and pipits. Sorry, I seem to have got my timing on here. And then we head up to Kruger National Park and then ultimately finish in Johannesburg. And I'll chat to you now about the first leg of this tour, which is birding the Drakensberg around Heimdal. So this is a shot of Dylan's. It's probably one of my favorite photographs of his. This is a Gurney sugarbird. So I showed you the Cape sugarbird early on in the talk. This is the only other species of that family. This is Gurney sugarbird. Has this beautiful sort of chestnut coloration on the chest, and they, just like Cape sugarbirds, they feed almost exclusively, I believe, on proteas. So we bird the slopes, the lower slopes of the mountains, looking for Gurney sugarbird. So similar to the bird I showed you earlier, which was Cape rock jumper, this is now Drakensberg rock jumper. Different to Cape rock jumper, as it has this orange breast and orange chest. It's also known as orange-breasted rock jumper, and again has excuse me, has this high-pitched call, excited call, and they occur in the family groups, and generally only really, really high up, above 2,000 meters, even higher, 2,500 meters in the Drakensberg Mountains. Once you hit the basalt, that's when you start to see these birds. This is a mountain pipit, relatively drab-looking bird, but they only occur, it's a very interesting bird, so they only occur in South Africa in the Drakensberg Mountains at above, probably above 2,000 meters, but they normally occur at higher elevations, similar to the previous bird I just showed you. And the actual, so that it's a breeding endemic. They're only known to breed here, but we're not entirely sure where they go in the non-breeding season. It's been suspected they might go to South Central Africa, Zambia, or maybe Central Africa. But where these birds actually go, nobody really knows. But they certainly disappear from South Africa in the wintertime. They only arrive in about October and leave in April. So a bird we do get on our subtropical tour. This is a bearded vulture. One of the two vultures we see in the Drakensberg, the other one being Cape vulture. It's also known as a lammergei, which means I think sheep stealer, which hasn't helped its cause with farmers. There are the occasional poisoning events because they believe that they take out livestock, which is not true. They feed on the dead animals only. And also a number of wind farms are going up in the Drakensberg Mountains. And this is a bit of a concern with the species that a few of these might actually be killed by the wind farms, by the big wind turbines. But a bird we see while going up Sani Pass near Hindville, we normally see a pair or two of them up there. We actually know where a nest is, a little bit into Lesotho. So I mentioned earlier the Kingdom of Lesotho. So on our day going into the Drakensberg, we actually go into Lesotho. So you can tick off another country, a tiny little country. That's where we often get these breeding bearded vultures. Next one is a bush blackcap. So we bird some of the forests around the lower altitudes in the Drakensberg. There's these beautiful montane forests. So bush blackcap is one of the star birds there. We also get things like Cape parrots. It's an endemic parrot to South Africa. White-starred robin. So beautiful high and montane forest specials. So next I'm going to chat to you about is birding around Zululand in St. Lucia. And en route, we stop at a Shawe to break up the journey where we do some lower altitude forest birding. So trogons. So you get a lot of trogons in South America. We just have the 3 or the 4 in Africa. We certainly have just the one in South Africa. That's the Narina trogon. This is a nice male, beautiful red chest. And despite how bright looking they are, they're actually very, very tricky to see. They're often sit just very, very quietly on a branch, and you don't see them until you suddenly look and there's one, a few meters away from you. You can also track them down by call. They've got this deep booming or hooting noise, which always sounds further than it is. They sound much deeper into forest when in fact they are only a couple hundred meters away. So you can go track them down like that. Spotting ground thrush is another star target in a Shawe. This is a true deep forest dweller. It doesn't occur in forest fringes, and we go right into the forest, and you've got to listen out for moving leaf litter and such, and that's how we found this bird. It can be incredibly difficult to pick out on the forest floor, especially when you see that back with those pale dots. It looks just like leaves. This is further more of a coastal bird, Rudza palus. It's this type of warbler, and it's another near endemic, just occurring in neighboring Mozambique. And this we find in the bushveld and the woodlands on the coast and on the coastal plain. So while on our subtropical tour, we come across a large number of weavers. So we might get half a dozen weaver species. So these make these, you've probably seen at some point, these beautiful woven nests. It really is impressive. I don't know how they do it with just their bill and their legs. This is a southern brown-throated weaver. It's quite a special bird here at its southern extent of its range in Africa. This is another beautiful shot of Dylan's. This is an African emerald cuckoo. This occurs in the forest of Ishawe. It's got a call that says "Pretty Georgie," and it's that you normally hear it first before you see it. And occasionally, I don't think I've ever had a view like this, but occasionally you can see them at eye level. There's actually a tower which goes up into the canopy of the Lindsay Forest in Ishawe. And if you're very lucky, like Dylan was here, you can see them at eye level. They're normally right up in the canopy. So next on our itinerary is moving a little bit inland into Kruger Game Reserve, perhaps my favorite game reserve in South Africa. It's quite a small little reserve, has probably 450 different species on the park list, and a large number of specials, so near endemics and sand forest specials, which I'll tell you about now. So high up on our list of target birds would be pink-throated twin spots. They're actually called twin spots because every feather you can see here has 2 spots on it. So that's where the name twin spot comes from. And we normally get them, got these high-pitched calls, which you've got to follow and track down in the sandveld. Thankfully, it's not normally too dense, so you can normally track them down with relative ease. This is a much tougher bird. This is a near-guard sunbird. It has a very similar distribution to the previous bird, the twin spot. It occurs just in northeastern South Africa and then into neighboring Mozambique. So this is near-guard sunbird. It's another sand forest special. And again, call is vital to track it down. Another option is to look for flowering plants. And there's normally a good accumulation of other sunbird species, and you might be lucky enough to find a near-guards. Broadbills. So not as easy to find. They do take a bit of work. They've got an incredible display flight. So they fly from a branch and then straight back on and make canicals with brr. And it's actually their wings which make that noise. And it's called a broadbill because it's got this really, if you look at its head on, it's got a really, really broad, wide-based bill. This is our only broadbill in Southern Africa. So next is just going to chat to you about bushracks. So we normally get about 4 species of bushracks on this tour. This is gorgeous bushracks, aptly named. It's very, very difficult to see. You normally hear it. It has quite a very obvious. For me, it's the sound of the African bush, and it does take a lot of work to track down, but it's certainly worth it. It has that beautiful crimson red throat. So this is gorgeous bushracks. And then I talked about early on how it's not just about the birding. So this is a white rhino, and actually probably one of the strongholds in South Africa of the white rhino population in Kruger Game Reserve and KwaZulu-Natal. It's got a square lip. So the other rhino here, black rhino, has a triangular lip. That's a browser. This is a grazer. And yeah, I'm not sure how many of you are aware, but it's been a huge problem in South Africa in the last couple of decades, and especially in the last decade, the huge numbers of rhino poaching. We're losing a few animals each day in South Africa, and it's a real concern. But thankfully, the numbers seem to be doing pretty well in KwaZulu-Natal and in Kruger Game Reserve, and we normally almost never seem to miss a white rhino in Kruger Game Reserve. And then just carrying on with the tour, we now head inland about a 3-4 hour drive. We gain in altitude now. We head up to the high altitude grasslands of Bakkerstroom. So it's again, some of the best probably endemic birding in South Africa. There's lots of larks, a few pipits which are endemic and near endemic in these grasslands. And it also makes a change from having to look up into the forest and really, crane your neck like that. I think you call it warbler neck, is it? Looking up into the canopy all the time. It's actually quite nice to have nice open plains and grasslands where you can enjoy things like crowned cranes or grey crowned crane, These are normally on the edges of wetlands, and you also get them feeding in the farmlands where they go for grain and wheat and what have you. I mean, they have these elaborate headdresses, and also similar to our blue crane, they have their breeding display. They have this dance where the pair sort of jump up and flap their wings around, and it's really quite something to watch. Actually, watched on my last tour, subtropical tour, just outside of Birding. I talked about endemic pipits. So this is yellow-breasted pipit. It's a South African endemic. And in October, they've just started their displays. So we keep an ear out for their displays overhead, and we don't normally miss this bird. Actually, very, very rarely do we miss it in Birding. So larks, this is this is Boerter's lark, but we also do get pink-billed larks in the area. We also get Rudd's lark, but Boerter's lark probably has the smallest range of any lark in South Africa, and one of the smallest range of any lark in the world. It's a tiny little area which it occurs, with Birding probably being the best area to see it. Again, like big, nice, obvious-looking birds around, as I mentioned earlier. This is a southern-billed ibis, quite common, so nowhere near as endangered as its sister species, northern-billed ibis, up in Morocco, in North Africa, and the Middle East. Their numbers are actually doing pretty well, and if you bird the grasslands, you generally will pick them up in quite good numbers, often in big flocks. Quite a crazy-looking bird with that bald head. We see a number of bustards and korhans in the area, so things like Denham's bustard. We also see white-bellied bustard, blue korhan. So as I said, korhan and bustard are interchangeable. It's just a local name which we had for them, although it is the IOC official name. So this is Denham's bustard, really big bird. This probably stands about 1.2, 1.3 meters, and quite obvious. And during the display season, which is actually in September, October, they puff out their chests, and you just see these white boars on the hill slope. They really puff out their feathers and they walk around like that. It's quite something to see. Okay, next, again, certainly one of the highlights of the trip is spending a few days around Kruger National Park. We use an open top Jeep or vehicle for our time there, which really makes photography and just viewing in general much easier, rather than being cramped up in a car. So here it's much more tropical. We get things like rollers, beautiful, very almost gaudy looking rollers, hornbills, lots of bushrikes, so kingfishers, so all these tropical species. We get woodland kingfishers, which are a intra-African migrant coming down in late summer. And yeah, again, as I mentioned earlier, really good numbers of large wildlife such as lion. It's with a few days in Kruger, it's pretty tough to miss lion. You generally always pick up a lion or two. We had on my last trip there, we had a big group we had 3 assumed brothers, big male lions, which we're wandering about together. It's probably perhaps the best place around to see leopard. So southern Kruger must have some of the highest densities of leopard just about anywhere on Earth. And again, there's a few, we often stay around Skukuza, where there must be about the best place in the park to see leopard. And we always hope to find that iconic look of a leopard sort of sitting in a tree on the edge of a riverbank, slung over a branch. And you generally do get that sighting too. Probably one of the best places in South Africa to find saddle-billed stork. It's a really crazy looking bird, beautiful colors. The rest of the plumage is black and white, so it's such an obvious bird. Has that saddle, as you can see on the top of the base of the building, and you find them generally along the major river courses. This is saddle-billed stork. There's a bunch of other storks around: black storks, African openbill, marabou stork. Again, another big obvious bird. This is a southern ground hornbill. They move around in their family groups. I believe this is a female, has this little blue throat. It should be red in the male. But these stand about probably over 1 meter tall, have this deep booming noise, which you can hear often early in the early morning. And they have become quite almost tame. They wander up to vehicles. They often use the edges of roads to scavenge. If there's any roadkill, they will scavenge for things. And they're quite vicious predators. They'll take out, birds. They'll take out little snakes, small reptiles. And so you often see them walking around with a snake curled around its bill. And we then head up next into Rust of Winter area. This is the area north of Johannesburg, Pretoria, about 100 kilometers north. And now with our shift a little bit further west from Kruger National Park, a few hundred kilometers west, we go through Dahlstrom, which are again some more high altitude grasslands, which we use to break up the drive. And then we also finish up the tour in Rust of Winter before finishing in Johannesburg Airport. And around Rust of Winter, sorry, I've done it again. Around Rust of Winter, we're sort of on the edge of the Kalahari, ecotown. So we get a few of these drier western species just creeping in. And this is where we can really bump up our trip list by getting these species which we wouldn't have seen anywhere else on the tour. It's much more lusher, more tropical, where we would have been previously on the tour. So this is one of these Kalahari type species which just creeps in there. This is crimson-breasted shrike. It's a type of bobo or gonolek, really just, so brightly colored and a beautiful bird and a beautiful voice to go there too. We get things like Mariko sunbird, quite similar to that Neerguard sunbird I showed you earlier in the talk, but the dry western equivalent. Another beautiful looking bird, this is violet-eared waxbill. We also get black-cheeked waxbills in the area too, which are, again, like a subtly beautiful coloration, sort of blood red plumage. And this is a male violet-eared waxbill, again, aptly named, and quite common in the areas where you visit, just north of Johannesburg. And we often look for, during the heat of the day, we'll look for little puddles of water where a bunch of seed eaters come to drink and canaries. And that's often where we can clean up on these birds. Yeah, this is a, this is quite a vicious ferocious little predator. It's a pearl-spotted owlet. It's actually mostly a diurnal bird. If you play its call, you can generate your own little bird party with everything coming in to find out where this owlet is, because it mostly relies on robbing nests. So robbing chicks and eggs out of nests, probably mostly chicks. So if other birds hear that call around, they make sure they get up on top of the bushes and they want to see where this bird is. So things are quiet in the bush. You can play that call to generate some interest. That's pearl-spotted owlet. And then this is white-throated robin-chat. This is a slightly it occurs in slightly lusher habitat. So that, in the area north of Johannesburg, we'll try a few riverbeds for this white-throated robin-chat. It's, I'd say, probably our best-looking robin-chat. Has a beautiful white throat. Maybe not as brightly colored as some of our other robin-chats, but it really is just so striking and a beautiful bird. And then we finish up our tour in Johannesburg. And then just to conclude, and I'm almost done here. So just a few, I guess, logistics of our tours or touring South Africa. So a good starting point is Cape Town, Johannesburg, the international airports, our two biggest international airports. We start, for instance, if you were to join our 8-day Cape tour and then finish with our 18-day subtropical South Africa tour, we would start our tour in Cape Town and then head across to Johannesburg. And you can do it quite comfortably in a couple of weeks, in 2 to 3 weeks. If you were to join both our tours, it would be almost a month, 26 days in South Africa. But it can be done, in a slightly shorter time frame. But sort of 3 weeks probably is about 3 weeks plus is about the optimum. And it actually, year round, it's great. So if you want to see our summer migrants. We get a lot of intra-African and Western Palearctic migrants coming in. October to December is best. That's also when the birds will be breeding or starting their breeding season. So they'll be very vocal, and that to me is always the best way to track down birds, is to actually hear the call first and go find them in the bush. So October, December is a really great time. That's when we do our subtropical tours, or subtropical and Cape tour. And then, but having said that, July to September, which is our winter months, so July, August being winter, just creeping into spring. It's also a better time for if you're looking for mammals. So the bush has much fewer leaves, so it's much thinner, and so generally just much easier to find these small cats and lions and leopards and what have you. And basically, just to conclude, if you would like to have a look at our website, birdingecotours.com, or get in touch with us, info@birdingecotours.com, if you have any questions, or if you'd like to find out about some of our trips. We do tours. I've chatted to you today about South Africa, but we do trips all over Africa and all over the world. We've actually found that our North American tours have become quite popular now, with people being restricted to North America now, or to America with COVID. So they're actually proved very popular. And yeah, thank you. I'd be happy to answer any questions, Luke. I don't know how I go from here.
Yeah. Hey, thank you, Dominic. I did put a link to Birding Ecotours in the chat for you as well. And so, yeah, please be sure to go and check that out. And then I'm also going to throw in a link to a South Africa trip that Tucson Audubon is doing with Birding Ecotours. We were supposed to do it last September, October. It got postponed to this September, October, and now has been moved to September, October of next year. So
we'll get there eventually.
Yeah, 2022 is when we'll be there finally. So yeah, if everything goes well, that's our plan. We do have just a few more spaces left on that, but it includes Cape Town, it includes the Kruger session. So go ahead and check that out if anyone's interested in joining me and Tucson Audubon. I don't know if we'll see Dominic, but I think Dylan will be leading us around, but maybe see Dom as well. Yeah. Any questions for Dominic? I didn't catch any in the chat, but maybe someone has a question that you'd like to ask Dominic. Go ahead. Or Dom just did such a fine job that you covered every single bird that you'd want to see there.
I think that must be it.
Well, all right. Hey, yeah. So Dominic, any last words before we close up, or are you good?
Yeah, probably not too much from our side. Yeah, we're now in midwinter basically down here in Cape Town, but the birding is still great. I talked about those Cape Town pelagics. There's been a lot of those going out of late, and they've been getting some really, really amazing birds pushing up from the subantarctic. We've been getting fulmars, southern fulmars, and royal albatrosses and wandering albatrosses. So that's been quite exciting. So when we lose all our summer migrants, we've got to sort of focus. We often turn our focus to the pelagic birding. So that's been fun. That's probably it from our side.
Cool. That's good. Yeah, Sharon mentioned looking forward to seeing the cranes there in South Africa. I think that's South Africa's the bird of the country, right? The country's bird.
National bird, yeah.
Yeah, national bird. Yeah.
Really majestic, beautiful looking bird.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, hey, how about everyone have a chance to just take yourself off of mute, give Dom some verbal love and gratitude, and then we'll sign off for the day.
Thank you.
Sure, no problem. Cheers, guys.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We'll see you all later. Thanks for being here. Thanks again, Dominic. Hope to meet you in
Okay.
person someday.
Yes,
Take
look
care.
forward to it. Cheers, Luke. Bye, everybody.